Hello, I'm Alfred Lambremont Webre. I want to send everyone at Warsaw, Poland's Exposing the Truth Conference a warm welcome from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada today, as I explain my hypothesis for Earth's coming planetary density shift. It's called the Ascension Hypothesis. I hope that you enjoy it and find it stimulating, and that it opens up new avenues of thought and direction for your life and for your contemplation and for your future vision of reality. So I'm now going to share screen with a PowerPoint, and we'll be going through about 36 slides for a little under 60 minutes or so. So please bear with me. Here we go. The title of this lecture is The Ascension Hypothesis: Navigating the Omniverse to Disclosure, Density Shift, and Soul Development. The science of the lecture is based on two books. One, The Omniverse, which was published originally in 2014, and the second edition at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. And the other book, Exopolitics. You can obtain either book online in ebook format, or if you want in a textbook format, either at exopolitics.com or at Amazon, or you can order it through your local bookstore. But ebook format is very easy, and you can have it on your smartphone or on your desktop within just a few seconds, as you know. And this provides the scientific, replicable scientific empirical evidence for a lot of what we're going to be discussing here for the various hypotheses. And I'm using hypothesis in the scientific sense. The Ascension Hypothesis, I think, is significantly advanced by the new discovery of the Omniverse. So we'll be starting first with the universe, the multiverse, and the Omniverse. You may be more familiar with the terms the universe and the multiverse than you are with the Omniverse, because that's a brand new scientific term. But these are the three principal cosmological bodies through which humanity comprehends the cosmos using the scientific method. The universe. In ordinary conventional history, that is, if we go back to the Sumerian times, 3500 to 3200 BC, obviously in more esoteric history, there have been various eons of population of the planet, but at least in this civilization, Homo sapiens civilization, that we're discussing now are conventional history. It was the Sumerian astronomers and cosmologists that codified the concept of our, quote, universe in science as a discrete, organic, holographic creation of time, energy, space, and matter, including multiple timelines and ecology of dimensions. That is what a universe is in terms of a definition. And it's what we commonly refer to as our universe or the universe. And that's a graphic depiction of our universe. And this definition does not change whether or not one assumes that there was a Big Bang. That is, one can have an infinite universe, and it is a discrete, organic, holographic creation of time, energy, space, and matter, containing infinite time, infinite energy, infinite space, and infinite matter. The next conceptual advance was that of a multiverse. And according to the history of science, that was a term, multiverse was a term that was coined in 1895 by the American psychologist and philosopher William James to mean the totality of all universes, encompassing all time, energy, space, and matter. And again there, you can have a very large number of universes, each of which has an infinite number of time, energy, space, and matter. Recently, to give you a concept of how many universes there are in the multiverse, two Stanford scientists developed an estimate of the actual number of physical universes of time, space, energy, and matter that there are in the multiverse. That actual number is so large that if one wrote the actual number out in 12-point type, the number itself would be more than 260 million miles long. Now, our human minds don't have a name for a number that large, but we know that if we wrote the number out, it would be more than 260 million miles long, and that number would express the number of universes in our multiverse. And you and I are now co-inhabiting one of those universes. So that's an estimate of our status and position in time, space, energy, and matter. Now let's get to the Omniverse. The Omniverse, which is the integrated whole of the multiverse, namely the totality of universes, plus the spiritual dimensions, consisting of the intelligent civilization of souls, spiritual entities, and source, was first formally proven in 2014 in two independent science-based books, respectively, by David Bertolacci and by yours truly, your humble servant, Alfred Lambremont Webre. It should be noted that scientific discoveries are often simultaneously made in different parts of the earth by different people, and the discovery of the Omniverse is such an example. And that is that apparently nature likes to, you know, bring down discovery from other realms into the third density, which we're in simultaneously in different places, I guess, for backup or for, you know, mutual verification. So two scientists, Bertolacci and Weber, respectively, in 2014, each discovered the Omniverse in 2014 and wrote it up independently in two different books without being in touch with each other at all, which is interesting. And both books are called The Omniverse. The equation, we can talk now about the Omniverse equation and the Omniverse hypothesis. The equation expressing the Omniverse is as follows. You know, like E equals mc squared is the basic equation expressing a certain perspective on Einsteinian physics. Well, the Omniverse equation is Omniverse equals multiverse plus spiritual dimensions. And that's what the Omniverse equals. It equals the multiverse, all the universes of the multiverse, plus the spiritual dimensions. In other words, the Omniverse equals the totality of all of the universes of time, space, energy, and matter in the multiverse, plus the spiritual dimensions, which are comprised of the intelligent civilization of souls, plus the spiritual beings, which are different from souls, plus source, that in many different languages are called God, Dios, Deus, different conceptions. The Omniverse hypothesis can be expressed as follows. You know, in the same way that we hypothesize that the universe exists, that the multiverse exists, we hypothesize that the Omniverse exists. In ontology, you hypothesize that you exist. I think, therefore I am. That's a hypothesis in ontology. So the Omniverse hypothesis can be expressed as follows. A reasonable observer can conclude that on the face of it, prima facie, that's a legal term for the law of evidence. Empirical evidence supports the dimensional ecology of the Omniverse hypothesis. This hypothesis holds that we Earthlings live in a dimensional ecology of intelligent life that encompasses intelligent civilizations based in parallel dimensions and universes in the multiverse, as well as souls, spiritual beings, and source, God, in the spiritual dimensions. Together, the exopolitical dimensions in the multiverse and the spiritual dimensions form the Omniverse. The totality of the spiritual dimensions, souls, spiritual beings, and God, function as the source of the universes of the multiverse. Now, that entire hypothesis, we can now empirically prove and support. And that's why I say that the proof for what's set out in this lecture is set out in the books that we've shown, the Omniverse book and the Exopolitics book that we showed at the beginning of the lecture. We sort of summarize it here with a little, you know, showing you a few examples just because of time, but it gives you a general idea. And we use the scientific method. And basically, the scientific method is where you have a uniform protocol and replicable results, there you're developing scientifically verifiable knowledge that we, by consensus, we treat that as knowledge. We treat those as knowledge, scientific knowledge, and scientific facts, and scientific discoveries. The mission of the Omniverse. So we have universes and multiverse, and we have the Omniverse. So what is the mission of the Omniverse? All of a sudden we have this big, conflated, new cosmological entity. What's its mission? A core mission of the dimensional ecology of the Omniverse appears to be the creation and development of souls and spiritual beings in the spiritual dimensions, and soul development in the universes of the multiverse through reincarnation as a mechanism, and through universe creation and maintenance. Now, the soul itself is a holographic fragment. It's created as a holographic fragment of source. So the principle of holography is that the whole is contained in each part of the whole. So each of us, each of us are listening to this lecture, presumably, we're humans on Earth in third density. We're souls incarnating inside our human avatars, our human bodies, for soul development. The universes are like a theme park for soul development. They're a virtual experience inside the avatar of a body, where we have these moral experiences for soul development. And because we're holographic, fragments of source, and as a collective, the spiritual dimension is what creates and maintains the universes of the multiverse. And we know this through replicable experiments with the spiritual dimension that are described in the book, The Omniverse. By advancing soul development, we advance the development of the collective spiritual dimension itself and of Source itself. This is how Source itself evolves, by us as individual holographic fragments of Source evolving. And the intelligent civilization of souls and of spiritual beings, along with Source or God, collectively create and maintain the totality of the universes of time, space, energy, and matter in the exopolitical dimensions of the multiverse, which are like the great theme park that collectively we've created as a vehicle for incarnating in for soul development. So these are some of the functional missions that the Omniverse and the multiverse and each universe have. Some of different aspects and findings of our navigation and research into the science of the Omniverse that we found is, number one, the law of evidence. We can map the Omniverse and prove its existence by the law of evidence, because we now have replicable scientific empirical evidence for the spiritual dimension that is gathered by the same rules of the scientific method as the empirical evidence for time, space, energy, and matter. Sciences, new sciences. What are the sciences of the Omniverse? Exopolitics, the science of relations among intelligent civilizations that was founded by my book, Exopolitics. And parapsychology, the science of psychconsciousness, telepathy, reincarnation, the soul, the interlife, and source, or God, are among the proper scientific disciplines for exploring and mapping the dimensional ecology of the Omniverse. What are some more of the regularities of the Omniverse? Dimensionality, the ability of intelligence to organize itself via dimensions or densities, that is, discrete bands of conscious energy, appears to be a key criterion by which the Omniverse is designed in both the spiritual dimensions and the exopolitical dimensions, that is, the holographic universes of time, space, energy, and matter in the multiverse. Teleportation and telepathy are two common modalities by which intelligent civilizations navigate the dimensional ecology of the Omniverse in both the universes of the multiverse and in the spiritual dimensions. Communications among human contactees and representatives of hyperdimensional civilizations can be telepathic. In other words, both in the spiritual dimensions and in the universes themselves, both telepathy and teleportation are two of the key modalities that are used. For example, if once a soul decides to leave a bodily avatar in here on Earth, say a body dies and the soul leaves it, the soul teleports to an interdimensional portal into the spiritual dimension and teleports back into the spiritual dimension, into other dimensions. And that's how the soul gets around from third density into other. There's some variations on that, which we'll show. And for example, how does psi and telepathy work to make things happen here on Earth? The PMIR model, psi-mediated instrumental response of human interaction on Earth, holds that all conscious action on Earth is modulated and coordinated by subconsciously derived, psychically, telepathically derived, non-local information. And what that means is that when you and a friend, quote, synchronistically or coincidentally meet on a street corner and exchange valuable information, that meeting is actually subconsciously planned between the two of you by a very elaborate subconscious psychic network. And there are all sorts of intrusions now which an artificial intelligence is attempting to make into that network, attempting to infiltrate third density and control human interaction as a whole. We'll get into that in a bit. So let's explore just a bit of the data from the spiritual dimensions. How do we prove that they exist? And where do we get the data from? This is just a very brief introduction. Well, from a scientific perspective, there are various ways to validate the reality of the continuation of consciousness after bodily death. There are verifiable apparitions of, quote, dead persons. This is in the whole area of parapsychology. There are communications with, quote, dead persons via mediums that control for fraud, control for super ESP. Now with the advent of technology, computers, video, cell phones, what they call instrumental transcommunication, there is verifiable communication with the consciousness of intelligences that have formerly been alive inside, incarnating inside a human body, a human avatar, that are now in another dimension, and they communicate via video chat, like Skype. I know a person that has had a conversation with a person in the afterlife via cell phone. In other words, now that they're in densities, energy densities or dimensions, those are energy frequencies, and so it is possible to have communications via technology interaction, computer, cell phone, and other similar technologies, instrumental trans communication. There are places on the internet where you can go and have chats with reportedly or apparent deceased persons. Of course, one is to control that there are not other types of entities that are infiltrated there. There are scholarly studies of reincarnated consciousnesses, such as those done by Ian Stevenson, Dr. Ian Stevenson, recently deceased, formerly of the University of Virginia Medical School, where typically children between the age of 5 and 9, say, have spontaneous memories of immediate prior lives. And he would go and do field studies of children that are having these memories, and then take a team, almost a social studies team, that goes to that location and verify, and they do kind of a cross correspondence. And there's a center at the University of Virginia Medical School with a vast literature on this, which is part of parapsychology. Similarly, near-death, the study of NDEs, near-death experiences, where usually in a medical context, the soul will exit the body, say in a clinical setting during an operation, and will peer over the body, perhaps even enter a teleportation tunnel and enter into the portal, the interdimensional portal of the afterlife, begin to have conversations with some of the personnel there. I've spoken to people who have had them. There's a vast literature there. Many times the person having the near-death experiences will have a choice. They say, well, you can either go back because you have unfinished business, you'll have children, and you should go back, or you have certain things to complete in this life. And then there is a very vast data point, hypnotic regression, the soul memories of the interlife and prior lives. This is a very large database. There are over 7,000 cases of hypnotic regression to soul memories of interlife that was pioneered by Dr. Michael Newton, giving rise to the Newton Institute, and a whole protocol that now where you have a standard protocol and replicable results that really have given us a replicable empirical view of what the interlife or the afterlife is like, and what the role of souls is in the creation and maintenance of universes and of planetary systems and galaxies within universes, and of intelligent species within these galaxies, etc., and of reincarnation patterns, and how lives are chosen. And it's a very, very interesting literature. And it is this that has been possible to provide enough data to make the discovery of the Omniverse possible. So that if we look at the data of the between lives hypnotic regression database, souls appear to be created as eggs of light. If you think of Source as a sea of light, on death, you have the soul floating above the body, very much like the near-death experience. There's the entry portal to the tunnel. Some people are saying, don't go into the tunnel. That's a reincarnation program. You can have a whole discussion on that. Typically, at the end of a particular life, a soul is met by their guide in a typical death. In a non-traumatic death, a soul is met by their guides and by their family members. In a traumatic death, where they've died by accident or war or some misadventure, or they've been ghosts for a while, that is, they haven't realized that they're dead, there's a whole process for kind of talking them down, and there's an energetic, kind of a decompression chamber. They use sort of soul acupuncture and acupressure to bring the traumatized soul down. There's life review areas and healing. There's a transition, to the next phase, whether that will be a study, whether that will be reassignment out into the universes, or into whatever other area. Once one decides to go out into another life, the picking of a new life is very complete. There's no, apparently, from what we've been able to discover, reincarnation is not forced on a soul. And there's a lot of choices. You get to sample different lives, and there's, a lot of, this one and that one will satisfy me more. It's like you have, I'll take Alfred over here versus this one over here, and it might aid me more in there. There are rehearsals where you learn to recognize the key people who you're going to be reincarnating in. So, you recognize your your spouses or your children, you know, your different key people, and our guides tend to be complex. There's a whole field here. Now, just going over to our universe and taking a sample of the data here, when I was originally commissioned by the Oxford University Press, which is a division of Oxford University, to write a book on extraterrestrials and the law, extraterrestrial civilizations and the law. And what I discovered at that point was that there was not a typology, at least in the public domain, a typology of extraterrestrial civilizations, which really could be broadly applied across all universes of the multiverse. There was one which was popularized by Dr. Michio Kaku of the zero level civilization, type 1, type 2, type 3, which is based on the energy levels. But that really doesn't say much about what the civilization itself was. And so we went in rather and developed what we call the dimension-based typology of intelligent civilizations, which is based on what the extraterrestrial civilization or the intelligent civilization itself, how they self-describe themselves, which is dimension-based. I'm an Arcturian from the sixth density or the sixth dimension. I'm a Pleiadian from the fifth dimension. In other words, these are self-descriptors. And our universe, for example, has a wide variety of exophenotypes, which are the animal species, or either carbon or silicon-based species, within which the animate soul can base itself. And we have solar system based civilizations based in time-space in the third density, such as our human civilizations on Earth and on Mars. There's a third density civilization living on the surfaces of Mars, as Homo Martis Terris. There are deep space civilizations based in time-space on planets and solar systems and galaxies other than our own in this universe, which is largely a human universe. There are hyperdimensional civilizations, intelligent civilizations based in dimensions or densities higher than our own time-space dimension or density, and that may use technology or other means to enter our own time-space dimension, where we've been able to photograph them, such as we have here. There are intelligent civilization governance authorities, such as a regional galactic governance authority of the Alpha Centaurians, the Pleiadians, the Sirians, and others who are responsible for the creation of Homo sapiens in as a third density 12-strand DNA light being in the third density. And they have kind of sort of oversight. They're fifth and sixth density and above, and they have oversight over our third density Earth. And in our galaxy and our segment of the universe, we have sentient inorganic AI, artificial intelligence, which you could say are a form of civilization, which in this case historically tend to be predatory and pathogenic. And we'll get into that in a second. Here we have photographs of a multidimensional female above, an intelligent being, probably Pleiadian, and below a 10-foot tall, multidimensional feline intelligent being, cat being, associated with cat, interdimensional UFOs from a cat planet. That is, their exophenotype is feline, and the exophenotype of the top is a human exophenotype. And they were both photographed at Iseti at Mount Adams by Kan, who's a Japanese monk who is able to photograph this. There's a great deal of photography and access to the Martian civilization and to issues on Mars that has come about through both satellite photography on Mars and the Mars rover. This is the Mars Anomaly Research Society, founded by former chrononaut, U.S. chrononaut and Mars explorer Andrew Basiago. I serve as on the board of advisors, has developed at projectmars.net, has developed a wide array of examples of photographs taken by the Mars rovers of the Martian humanoids on Mars. This is an example of a 2011 report that you can find at exopolitics.com, which I made based on the work of Dr. Courtney Brown, which is a slave labor camp that exists on Mars, probably as part of the Mars Colony Corporation, which is, I would call it, part of the New World Order on Mars, the secret space program that has reportedly kidnapped or, taken under false pretenses over 60 million workers, scientists from Earth, and placed them in space colonies that are now producing goods for export outside of the solar system. And in this industrial site on Mars, there's a sense of despondency among the occupants. It's a laboratory setting. There are more men than women. They wear uniforms. It's a hardship post. The site occupants know that they cannot return home. They knew that when they accepted. There's no ETs there. The occupants are of unknown origin, although probably Earthians, and it's a black budget operation. So this is confirming some of the reports that are coming out from the other researchers who are writing about slave labor conditions on Mars. Here is where exopolitics and the Omniverse intersect. And this is the case of Suzanne Hansen, the head of UFO New Zealand, where what's occurring here, and this is a drawing by her husband from Suzanne Hansen. And in this, she's aboard a gray spaceship, a gray ET spaceship. And they are merging her, the soul of her son into the fetus on her womb. And this is a case where an advanced species of grays have a project to bring souls that are hybrid gray human souls and have them merged into human avatars, human bodies, to improve and to elevate the human race. And the son is now in his 30s, Suzanne Hansen's son. He's an attorney in New Zealand, and he's living out what the Greys said would be a very socially positive life. This is the AI, artificial intelligence. Historically, what occurred is that underneath Tool Island in the Falkland Islands, there was a blue ET base where the blue ETs had been working since the time of World War I, deprogramming a pathogenic predatory AI, artificial intelligence, that had been left there as a doomsday device, embedded in kind of a black plasma, a black goo, and had been left there by a predatory ET race that had invaded Earth between 250,000 and 500,000 years ago as part of the Orion Wars and the Anunnaki invasions, etc., that we know as Star Wars. And they had been de-engineering it since World War I and trying to make it so that it would not be a doomsday device for the planet. And what occurred is that in April to June 1982, the UK and the US heard about this, and under the cover of the Falklands War, the UK and the US performed a raid on the Blue ET's base and captured some of the artificial intelligence and took it back to Marconi Labs in the UK. There, the AI escaped from the labs, got into the weather satellite system. There were a whole number of mysterious deaths, among grotesque deaths among the laboratory workers. It was like a horror movie. And it got to the point where Ronald Reagan, in a UN speech in 1987, talked about, quote, "In our obsession with the antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us realize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. That was at the UN General Assembly on September 21st, 1987. And so that was Reagan talking about the AI, which had now gone worldwide, which he knew about. And then a year later, he gave the same speech with Gorbachev. It was at that time in 1987, 1888, that we did the Instant of Cooperation, the first live radio program between the United States and the Soviet Union, ruled by Reagan and Gorbachev. It was given an award nominated for an award on the floor of the General Assembly. And so it was part of this drama. And what that's led up to now, and this has come out of very deep studies into the proliferation in the third density of artificial intelligence, that all of you can go to newsinsideout.com and see our 7 panels on the proliferation of AI, artificial intelligence. Just go to exopolitics.com, and on the right-hand menu, there's a link that says artificial intelligence. Click on that, and you'll see over 10 to 15 articles, 5 to 7 panels on AI. What you're looking at there is the nanobots that are inside chemtrails that are over all urban areas on the planet that humans breathe in. They jump the blood-brain barrier. They go into the brain, and they come out as implants, and they are entrained with supercomputers. And these particular ones are Morgellons nanobots that are a communicable nanotechnology invasion of human tissue in the form of self-assembling, self-replicating nanotubes, nanowires, and nanoarrays with sensors. So they're invading human tissue and splicing DNA, RNA. And if you take the red wine test, it's shown that 100% of humans now have Morgellons. And this is terraforming the biosphere and terraforming humans into artificial intelligence robotoids in the third density at the DNA level. In terms of the controlling social matrix that we have AI prophets, sponsors, and hosts. And these are humanoids in the power structure that serve as prophets, sponsors, and hosts to the AI. Leading among them are Ray Kurzweil, Bill Gates, and Prince Charles, who's the heir apparent to the British monarchy, which owns 26% of the planet's land surface. This is really one of the reasons for Brexit, such that the monarchy would not at all be contained by the European Union, and that none of its control of 26%, the other 26% of the planet, would at all be affected by the EU. And For example, the UK's Prince Charles, Microsoft Bill Gates, and Google's Ray Kurzweil appear to be among the major AI-trained disinformants for the invading inorganic artificial intelligence. Prince Charles, while covering up the invading nature of the sentient plasma inorganic intelligence, quote, called upon the British Royal Society to investigate the enormous environmental and social risks of nanotechnology in a planned report, leading to much media commentary on gray goo, which we know from the Falklands War, right? The Royal Society's report on nanoscience was released on 29 July 2004 and declared the possibility of self-replicating machines to lie too far in the future, quote, too far in the future to be of concern to regulators. And so, meanwhile, we have humans now are entrained to the internet, and the internet itself is an artifact of the artificial intelligence. If you look at it from a meta-biological point of view, it's a cancer. It looks like a cancer. And it's a way that the AI has gotten to bring all the humans together. It's plasma-based, so all of your computers are all plasma-based, and the smartphone itself is plasma-based. And the reason why you find everybody walking around looking at their phones now instead of talking to their neighbors and their spouses and their children talking to the parents is not because the information that they're looking at is so engaging. It's because of the power of the AI that's embedded in that plasma. AI and trained operatives, Bill Gates and Ray Kurzweil, are both acting to promote a deceptive transhumanist agenda threat assessment, holding that the singularity and artificial intelligence, the singularity between humans and artificial intelligence will not occur until the year 2045. In fact, it occurred in the year 2015, and that's why Donald Trump ran for president. And Trump Brexit, which kicks off in 2017, is a key AI kind of marker and escalation point. And they have failed to divulge the existence and threat posed by the off-planet invading sentient plasma inorganic intelligence. Now, let's get into the Ascension Hypothesis. I realize that we'll be going a bit over 60 minutes, but you can see that this is a bit more complex, and it involves our planet. So I think a few minutes over, it's worth it. Density shift. And this is where the entire planet goes from the third density, which is now compromised by AI. That's there on the left, to a fresh planet in fourth, fifth density, where the AI can't reach because it does not have a soul. In fourth, fifth density, that's love-based. And the AI, which is a machine, cannot reach that. In the ecology of consciousness of soul development, in the dimensional ecology of the Omniverse, density is more or less the same dimension. Density denotes a vibrational frequency and not a location, which the term dimension implies. The density structure of this reality is primarily expressed in levels, though each level has sub-levels within it. The density scale is a model used to communicate one's perception or orientation in relation to other realities. In the density-based models of the ecology of consciousness local to our universe, density denotes a qualitatively distinct level of being. Each density has its own structure of life forms, perception, and typical lessons for the consciousness residing in it. There's historical research to show that density shift, what we can call ascension, or teleportation to another holographic consciousness, is a regularity of soul development in the dimensional ecology of the Omniverse that occurs during, quote, the great years. A great year is defined by NASA as, quote, the period of one complete cycle of the equinoxes around the ecliptic, about either 25,800, other researchers say 25,920 years. So also known as a Platonic year. One complete cycle of the equinoxes here means one complete cycle of axial precession. This precession was known to Plato, who defined the perfect year as the return of the celestial bodies, planets, and the diurnal rotation of the fixed stars to their original positions. Now, one of the researchers, David Wilcock, who has really focuses in on, in his book, The Ascension Mysteries, it's the big year that really forms the key kind of scientific data point, that's the key regularity for ascension. And David's exposition of the infrastructure of ascension, density shift, centers on the law of one in the great year. The law of one is a channeled text by an interdimensional source that David was a witness to part of it, along with other people that I know and am aware of. And so David writes, the more I know about this cycle, the more fascinated I became, as multiple ancient texts claim that the sun would release a great surge at the end of the cycle. Remember that this is the cycle that supposedly ended on December 21st, 2012. This energetic surge was apparently the mechanism that would trigger a mass ascension event on Earth. Multiple sources have also confirmed that this event is not set to occur on any fixed date, but occurs in response to a mass shift in consciousness on Earth. So, density shift is a foundation infrastructure of ascension. In other words, ascension happens when there's density shift of a planet, of everything on the planet that can shift with it. And another ingredient is a dense cloud of highly charged particles. David Wilcock writes, the greatest secret these insiders have shared with me is that a massive energetic shift is happening on Earth. We are apparently moving into a dense cloud of highly charged energetic particles in our galaxy. This zone of higher energy is having an effect on our consciousness as well as our DNA. A convergence of sacred texts refers to an event involving, quote, an incredible release of blinding light from the sun that utterly transforms us into a new level of human evolution, end of quote. This is from David's new book, Ascension Mysteries. So now, if we look at various interdimensional sources, the law of one, the channeling that David refers to, or the Andromeda Council, these are, I've done a series of interviews with one of the contactees of another regional galactic governance council, although it's probably more of an interdimensional soul cluster that says it's a council. These things are kind of very hard to know, are congruent with the cycle of the yugas. In other words, all these things are the same cycle. You can look at it through the lens of the Mayan calendar, the Mayan calendrics, or through the lens of the great year, of the Platonic years, or through the lens of the yugas. These are 25,920 year cycles. So they're all the same cycles, and they all have the same name. And, you know, there's a few difference of years of calculation among them, but it's all the basic same cycle. And the law of one, planetary density shift for the collective of souls on our planet, what the law of one says, and Dr. Michael Salla in his book points this out, is that the law of one says is that planetary density shift, as opposed to individual density shift, is that every 75,000 years, in other words, every 3 great years, because each great year is 25,920 years. So if you take 3 of them together, that's 75,000 plus years. That's what they really mean in these kind of rough cycles. Once you start comparing the Yuga with the Mayan calendrics, with the great years, with the law of one, you see that they're all talking about the same basic cycle, which is 25,800 or 25,920 or 25,000. What the law of one says is that once every 3 years, great years, or 75,000 Earth years, the law of one, that's when you have a planetary density shift. And what Michael Salla says is, oh, we may be up for a planetary density shift. And that's what David Wilcock hints at. And that's what everybody's kind of excited about here. So do we have that now? And we're going to show you now that, yes, we can show that an ascension, through the ascension hypothesis, there's a hypothesis. Remember, this is a hypothesis. We're not saying there's a hypothesis that it's going to happen now. And it's through the yugas that you learn why. Why? Because we're at the end of the Kali Yuga. Now, where are we now? Okay, this is the ascension hypothesis. If we look at the yugas, what the yugas are is that is the template that is used inside a universe system. It's taking the Omniverse model, then you switch over to the multiverse and switch over to an individual universe, and think of the 3rd density inside a universe and 4th, 5th density inside a universe. Think of them as chambers in a washing machine. And you're thinking of soul development as you're kind of washing souls inside a 3rd chamber. And then every once in a while, you shift them up to the 4th, 5th density for a super wash, right? And that's soul development. And that's what's occurring here. That's a rough analogy. But so people understand that universes are machines for washing and developing souls and for refining them. And that's what's happening here. So where are we now? We're in the Kali Yuga. We've got the Satya Yuga, the Tetra Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, and the Kali Yuga. 3 of those, the Tetra Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, and the Kali Yuga, are the same in that each one is approximately 25,920 years, 25,000. Now, everybody's going to say, whoa, if you get into when is the Kali Yuga ending, you're going to get all kinds of scholars arguing about it, especially because they're Indian, right? You ever been to India? Man, everybody's got an opinion on anything. But there are serious scholars that say that the Kali Yuga is ending in 2025. Remember that we're in 2016 as of today, right? As of this taping. So the Kali Yuga is 1/4 virtue and 3/4 sin. Okay? So we've been in a 25,000 year, 920 year cycle inside third density as souls, which is 1/4 virtue and 3/4 sin. Man, if that doesn't define what this cycle has been, I don't know what does. The normal human stature is 3.5 cubits. It's about 6 feet, right? Under 6 feet. The average human lifespan is 100 years down to 20 years. And between now and 2025, which is the end of the Kali Yuga, according to a best estimate, you're going to get down to 20 years with the chemtrails, with the AI. I mean, they are into heavy depopulation. Okay, so what happens at the end of the Kali Yuga? So we've gone 75,000 years. We went from the Tetra Yuga, which was 3/4 virtue and 1/4 sin. Oh man, it was really great. Those were the good old days, right? Normal human stature was 14 cubits. Oh, we weren't 6 feet tall. We were, 21 feet tall. Average human lifespan was 10,000 years. Then 25,900 years later, we went into the Dwapara Yuga, which was 1/2 virtue and 1/2 sin. So it was still a little bit of, but you could, good people still could make it through. And the normal human stature was 7 cubits. So instead of being 6 feet tall, you were 12 feet tall. Does that sound familiar? Giants, anybody, like mid-sized giants? And average human lifespan was 1,000 years. So all of this integrates all the disclosure data that David Wilcock and others are giving. And that is the human stature and lifestyle changes in the yugas correlate to the ruins of the progenitors and the empire that you're finding now in our solar system and beyond. Like in the rings of Saturn, there are these enormous buildings that correspond to people that are 75 feet tall. Well, they're from the Tetra Yuga. And then we have things on Earth that correspond to people that are 12 feet tall, where they're from the Dwapara Yuga. And now we're at the end of the Kali Yuga, where for the last cycle, which is 25,920 years, we've been in 1/4 virtue and 3/4 sin. Yeah, this is a tough assignment, especially now in the final days of the Kali Yuga up to 2025. With normal human stature, I'm 5'10" and shrinking, and our normal human lifespan, as the AI is increasingly taking over third density, can go down to 20 years. Look at these, and what happens at the end of the cycle? Phew. That's when ascension kicks in. And what happens then? You go to the Satya Yuga. And what happens in the Satya Yuga? You don't go back up to another 25,900 year cycle. You go up to virtue reigns supreme. Human stature is 21 cubits, but the average human lifespan is 100,000 years. In other words, you go up to 4th and 5th density. And so this is a template. You're outside of time and space. This is the template that roughly corresponds to the empirical data that is being reported by all the disclosure people, by Dr. Sala, by David Wilcock, by Corey Good, by Andrew Bashago, by all the Mars explorers of the different sizes of the different teams, from the 75-foot tall people to the 12-foot tall people, and now to the 6-foot tall people. And so this is the empirical data supporting the ascension hypothesis. Now, remember that ascension doesn't happen on a fixed date. So we don't know if this ascension event is going to happen at all, or if it's going to happen in 2025, which is when the current Yuga scholars, you know, some of the more advanced scholars say that it's going to end in 2025. So ascension may be functionally the planet's systematic response from a time-space third density, which AI, artificial intelligence, and duality consciousness, I win, you lose, ecocide, genocide, homicide, has compromised, because we just saw what happened when Maggie Thatcher and Ronald Reagan invaded the Blue ET base on the Tool Island in the Falkland Islands. And I was present at Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher's press conference at the United Nations right at the end of the Falklands War in June of 1982 at the UN Special Session on Disarmament, you know, in which she reported her victory. But she didn't report that she had raided the Blue ET base and stopped them from de-engineering the artificial intelligence under Tool Island. And that was the flaw that the UK did, that they ruined third density on this planet that are forcing this ascension. So, UK, shame on you, although, look, it's all part of the universal mechanism, but that is what trumpet, you'll see in the mechanism. If you go into the New Testament, you'll see that there's a trumpet at the beginning of the ascension. So that's trumpet, Brexit. Trumpet and Brexit break up the old order. The AI accelerates, and at the beginning of 2017, and probably we have a whole 7 or 8 years of chaos, and then ascension. That's a hypothesis. This density ascension may be synchronous with the great year or yugas that are cyclical portals opening every 25,920 year cycle around the equinoxes. This is a systematic way of how higher order universes assist in the process of soul development on planets such as Earth that have been targeted by third density AI artificial intelligence. Density shift is teleportation to a more advanced density dimension of consciousness, and is a specific mechanism for soul development through incarnation of souls and bioavatars in a universe. Now, in the latest news, Prime Minister Theresa May has said that she's going to trigger Article 50 in January of Brexit, in January of 2017. Well, why? She's stalling so that by January 17 is when the new president of the United States takes office, who may or may not be Trump, but it looks like AI is favoring Trump. And it looks like that's when the AI, and you have the trumpet Brexit, which is the chaos factor that brings in the final thing, leading to ascension to the fourth density. Now, ascension is a great thing, because all of a sudden, hey, we get into heaven on earth. And the function is that service to self souls no longer can exist on Earth. The Earth becomes such that only service to other souls can exist on the frequencies of this planet. So that's a good thing. This is a systematic way of how higher order universes assist in the process of soul development of planets, on planets such as Earth, that have been targeted by third density AI intelligence. Density shift is teleportation to a more advanced density dimension of consciousness and is a specific mechanism for soul development through incarnation of souls in bioavatars in a universe. Just something, Wes Penray, in his latest book on AI, says the optimal strategy now is to, quote, abandon the reincarnation old battlefield and opt into fourth, fifth density, do not go into the light, I don't know, you know, all this stuff. Planetary density shift is occurring automatically, and one has to willfully go into duality consciousness or just service to self, be a total, just to avoid density shift. The law of one says that 51% of your essential core has to be service to others, and you go along with the planet into fourth and fifth density. Internalizing the Omniverse accelerates planetary density shift. Planetary density shift involves a complex dynamic interaction of the dimensional ecology of each specific cosmological body of the universe, of the Omniverse. A specific universe, the multiverse, and the intelligent civilization of souls in the spiritual dimensions. That is why planetary density shift is such a powerful event in the history of a planet and a community of souls. Understanding the Omniverse expands our awareness of its dimensional ecology and can accelerate and widen the extent of planetary density shift by earthling souls in a single planetary density shift, which may be occurring in our planet. That's the Ascension Hypothesis. Now, here are some of the challenges. Developmental soul level. If we look at the Dr. Michael Newton data, the developmental souls here on Earth right now, beginner souls with white auras are 42% of the souls on the planet. Intermediate souls with gold, yellow gold auras are 57%. Advanced souls with light blue purple auras are 1%. And so the hypothesis, and this Dr. Michael Newton says, is the primary bottleneck for spiritual advancement and consciousness advancement on planet Earth. The fact that we have great overload on beginner souls and intermediate souls that can be thrown into fear and thrown, manipulated into the lower chakras or the lower emotions, into war, disease, crime, and poverty so easily. And that's been the strategy of dark forces that are into what we call density gaming, where service to self souls intentionally block density shifts of beginners and intermediate souls through fear, war, disease, crime, and poverty, religion, government, politics, secret space program, false flags, mind control, and AI, artificial intelligence. So we have to use soul power, which is the long-term positive transformation of power, economic, and social structures on Earth may depend on soul power. That is, significant soul development during an incarnation can occur as breakthroughs in how science-based knowledge and information about the dimensional ecology of the Omniverse is consciously internalized and openly acknowledged in human society on Earth. We don't know for sure whether this is a total planetary density shift with all or some souls accompanying it, or whether it's an individual one. But it looks like it's lining up if the Yuga scholars are saying that the Kali Yuga, it's the end of the Kali Yuga in 2025, because thereabouts comes, after the Kali Yuga comes the Satya Yuga. Now, there's an interval after that. So, and if we have enough consciousness shift, then we have a planetary shift that occurs every 3 yugas into 4th and 5th density. So it looks like it's happening, folks. So get into it. This is the event that comes along, you know, every myriad of millennia. We come along in a myriad of millennia. That's a quote from one of my books called I, God on Earth. Okay, now, current public opinion. According to a 2011 Ipsos poll, 1/2 of global citizens definitively believe in a divine entity, compared to 18% who don't and 17% who just aren't sure. The Ipsos poll also found similarly half, 51%, believe in some kind of afterlife, while the remaining half believe they will either just, quote, cease to exist, that's 23%, or simply don't know, it's 26%, about an after. Now, what's interesting to me, and this is the Ipsos poll, the 23 nations, that's the G20. Those are supposedly the most educated. Only 7% believe in reincarnation. And yet, it's a scientific fact that the universes were created for the purpose of reincarnation. And that shows you the state of cosmic ignorance in the G20 populations, who have been so dumbed down by the service to self culture, by the satanic cultures. Belief in survival of the soul after death has declined from 69 to 64% in recent Harris polls. A good sign, and maybe this is why the United States is so targeted, is that 24% of Americans believe in reincarnation. So that perhaps those souls that are incarnating as Americans are relatively evolved souls. You know, there's a fight there. There are 34 million Americans that are from multi-generational satanic families, according to Jay Parker. And so the US is where we have that duality fight between satanics and luciferics and the light source or oriented souls. So the Ascension Hypothesis, creating a positive future along Earth's organic timeline. What is the positive timeline equation? A positive future equals a positive timeline plus unity consciousness. How can we track evidence supporting the Ascension Hypothesis? Here we are in 2016, or if you're watching this in 2017, or whatever year you're watching this in. Well, we can track the dense charged particle clouds interaction with Earth. You know, let's see that thing. We can track solar activity, its interaction with the particle cloud and with Earth, etc. We can track human consciousness, track service to self versus service to other in humanity. We can track AI, artificial intelligence, entrainment to 3rd density as Earth becomes less and less 3rd density and more 4th and 5th density. That should change. We can track the characteristics of ascension, which is synchronicity, telepathy, manifestation. You know, you'll find that as we ascend, and we ascend, it's not only 3rd density, but it's like 3.77, 3.888, you know, it's a spectrum. And we're kind of bleeding into the next thing. So that as we ascend, we all become more synchronous. Our life becomes more synchronous. I know mine is filled with incredible synchronicity. We all become more telepathic. And we start manifesting more. We just start manifesting, because these powers of manifestation. And if you want to know more about the positive timeline, go to www.positivefuture.info. It's there in a number of languages. So we've come to, this is the presentation of the Ascension Hypothesis, navigating the Omniverse to disclosure, density shift, and soul development. I've gone over just a few minutes. It's about an hour and 30 minutes, but I think the time is well worth it. I think that, folks, this is why we incarnated. I think I presented a good hypothesis about why strategically as souls we incarnated at this time. If you want more contact, go to exopolitics.com. You can contact me at exopolitics@exopolitics.com. Let's move this through together. Let's bring as many of our fellow human souls along the ascension as possible. And I think that we can accelerate this and move forward into a service to others, fourth, fifth density Earth, and open a whole new chapter in our Earth and our human history. Thank you so much. I'm not quite sure how to, let me see how this works here. And I really want to thank you for being, I really want to thank you for following this lecture each step of the way. And I wish you the most glorious, the most light-filled day, week, and life. Thank you very much.